Welcome back to Advus After Hours, a podcast focused on the intersection of innovation, finance, and community. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Greg Spencer, CEO of Timbers Resorts. Greg joined us in our new office in Winter Park, right down the street from their headquarters. Let's jump to that conversation now.
I want to jump back quickly just to your personal life. So you were born in Winter Park, is that correct?
I was born in Orlando. It was my dad was in the Army during the Vietnam era, and my grandparents lived in Claremont, Florida. Okay. And there wasn't really any hospital in Claremont. So I was ironically born in Orlando, but I never lived here. Okay. My mom was staying with her parents, obviously, while my dad was deployed. So yeah, I was born in Orlando, but grew up predominantly in Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm. And you yourself you were in the military as well, captain in the Air Force, I believe?
I was captain in the Air Force. Went through ROTC at Florida State University. I was corps commander at Florida State, and which is you're the cadet in charge of training all the cadets, which was fun. And, loved my time in the military. So I was 5 years active duty, 3 years in the reserves. I was a logistics officer, but did a lot of other things, air-based ground defense, deploying in support of different things. So it was fun. It was, and then my last assignment, I was in a high security research and development laboratory called Rome Labs in upstate New York, and working on some pretty cool technology. I worked in a skiff, so I worked in one of those secure rooms, and it was pretty neat.
A lot of stuff you probably can't even talk about.
Some of it you can't, although I have seen some of it deployed, and it was like, cool. Okay. It's like because a lot of times it's theoretical until at the lab, and then it gets further advanced and becomes either a lethal weapon or intelligence gathering tool, or, worked on a little bit of everything.
Now, how did your time in the military shape, your ability as a leader and, being a CEO of a company like Timbers?
It's a couple different things. One, it's really hard when you're a cadet in charge of other cadets, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody knows you're going to graduate. I'm going to be a second lieutenant just like you, right? So you have to find ways to motivate people. And I try to motivate through effort, and just try to outwork people and get people. There's always going to be those percentage of people that get it and the percentage of people that don't. It really kind of started at boot camp. It was pretty interesting. You did a force ranking of all 25 people. And like what you did is you wrote a little description on top 5, bottom 5. And, I go meet with the field training officer, and she goes, all right, well, she goes, I actually got 24 responses for you. And I started laughing and she goes, and they're not all top 5. I'm like, I can tell you the 5 people that are bottom 5. Right. And she goes, well, you were number 1 on that. I'm like, yeah. I was like, and I'm perfectly okay with that, because those were slackers and I held them accountable. And, hey, if that's how you get back at me for me holding you accountable, then so be it. And I think that's one of the biggest things is like, you're never going to make everybody happy. And particularly when you start talking about development, you cannot develop these large, complex, everything from 4,200 acres in Tuscany to 450 acres Kauai to 300 acres on Captiva Island. You can't do that by committee. You'll fail, and it actually will be a worse outcome. People think, if you have everybody's input, it'll be a great outcome. No, it won't. Right. And I think that's the challenge, right? It's like, so I did learn, I think in ROTC, it really kind of set the course that I know I'm not going to make everybody happy. Mm-hmm. And then, I think the other thing is just indecision is the worst leadership trait. I believe, right? Someone like if you're going to fail moving forward, right? Fail trying to be productive. It's kind of, I think it's a lot of time, particularly now, I think a lot of people are worried to fail. There's social media, and there's like, you can get amplified. You can have the, 5 knuckleheads, and, and then everybody starts opining in on it and they don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of be, got to kind of be resolute. If we're going to fail at something, let's fail forward and not just be indecisive and not make a decision. And you're in the financial industry. The worst thing you can do for IRR is nothing, right? Because it's sometimes it just, that meter starts running, it's just burning, and you almost can kind of inadvertently get too much capital deployed, but not have anything
Right.
built to show for it.
So as Timbers grows and you're bringing on new individuals, employees, is there a specific trait or characteristic you're looking for?
Hopefully everybody that's applying has the aptitude to do something. We really look for the attitude, right? You know, what's the right attitude? I had an interview with a guy today and for a open general manager position, and he had a great attitude. And, you know, I can work around that or look, someone might be, if you notice, we have a couple of people that came from different worlds, right? They came from more of the fund world. You know, they either worked at CNL Financial or Xenia or someone else. I can get them up to speed on the resort space, but I need the positive attitude. I need the team attitude. And look, you know, 95% of our team is not in Winter Park. They're in Tuscany. They're in Kauai. They're in, you know, Vail. I mean, those are the people that are generating the revenue for our firm. And I you know, I never forget it. And I kind of had that role in the military where I jokingly say, you know, I was a gun cleaner and a gunslinger, you know, like, you know, one doesn't work without the other. There is no SEAL Team 6 without all the support and team behind it. And there is no team and support behind it if there's no SEAL Team 6, right? So you kind of really need to, not that I would equate what I did to that, but you need to have both, and they have to work synergistically. And I think that's the toughest thing. And particularly in a, you know, we operate across 12 hours of time zones. And that's the toughest thing, is to make sure that our corporate team understand we're there to support them. They're the gun, you know, slingers, if you will, providing service or selling real estate or building a product. And we really need to be there to support them and try to help them out.
How would you describe what Timbers does? How does your business operate? And then we can get into some of these properties and things like that.
We're a boutique luxury resort developer and operator. David Burden was our founder. David was a gentleman that worked for a lot of different developers before. I think David saw an opportunity to really have something that wasn't that big plan unit development scale, was a little smaller scale, but was really high touch. And, you know, the other thing that David saw is, like, living out in the Aspen area, you know, there's a lot of homes that are used 10 to 14 days a year. And David's like, there has to be a better way. So he had worked on a project called the Roaring Fork Club, had a fractional component to it. And I think David saw that, like, hey, that's a higher and better use for real estate. So we kind of got into the private residence club business in addition to whole ownership. And, you know, some of it was just zoning, right? You know, in Aspen, you know, the running joke is you'll get one fee simple, you know, unit approved for every year you stay in zoning, right? So, you know, whereas the fractional, it works in some of these communities because they're hotter keys.
Yeah.
So you run at 80 to 85% occupancy. And that's what some of these communities want, right? Because you got to remember, who elects the mayor in Aspen or Vail or Napa or some of those places is not the tourists that come through there.
Right.
It's the folks that work there year round, that own businesses year round. They're the ones that make the decisions, planning decisions, zoning decisions, et cetera. And so I think they like the fact that fractional or private residence club is a little more occupancy. And then we initially were just a merchant developer. We didn't do, any, the irony is David was a control freak. So we would, in a good way, we would actually operate our clubs for several years until we sold out. And then we would turn it over to the HOA. And look, not all HOAs are bad, but a lot of them are. And so, you know, you would have someone that, you know, I don't know, he was a mortgage banker, or he was, I don't know, an engineer. And like, they start making decisions on what après ski is going to look like and what the sheet counts are. And then this guy's wife gets involved. And so owners started coming to us saying, like, guys, we bought this because you are operating it. We want you to operate it. So for the first 10 years, we didn't operate anything. And then we got into the operating business. Similar thing happened with rental. We would set up local rental shops, and, our owners came to us and said, I got this rental guy. He wants 50% of gross revenue. I don't know what he's doing for marketing. Can you step in? So some of our growth has really happened almost by accident, by people coming to us. But we are, it grates on my team sometimes because we have a lot of hospitality professionals, but we are a real estate developer. That is our key focus. We happen to operate. And, I think our team operates pretty well.
We're having to do it very well, I was going to say.
Our property in Italy, we were number one resort 5 years in a row by Travel and Leisure, number 2 hotel in the world by Travel and Leisure. And that's from a real estate developer. So what do we know? But, but we know how to pay attention to our guests and our owners. And I think it's a little different. Some of the bigger brands, I'm very good friends with some of the big hospitality brands, and they serve a function. And it'll be interesting to see because they're all rushing into real estate. Real estate is different. It is different than selling a room for a night.
Right.
And so what we found is that, because we're so focused on selling real estate, I think we go a little above and beyond. I think we're a little bit more personalized. And I think we understand that our goal is to create an environment for people to make memories with their family. That's our goal. Right. And I think, that's what we sell. We don't sell price per square foot. We know it all, but you'll never catch us in a sale saying, well, this one's down the street, $1,600 a foot, and this is $1,800. We are selling the experience. You want to be here the first time your granddaughter skis a black, or the first time your grandson catches a tuna, or, that's what we sell. And it's really a motive. And that's what we try to do in our marketing. It's what we try to make sure our operations do. And that's certainly what we pitch when we're selling people.
It sounds like you're at the forefront of fractional ownership model a little bit. Is that true? And kind of for everyone, quickly differentiate fractional versus everyone thinks it timeshares.
Yeah.
What's the difference there?
Sure. Yeah. Timeshare, particularly now with the points model, that's in a Florida land trust. There's a use plan for it. It's just a different product, and you own a part of a trust, right?
Got it.
Whereas the fractional and private residence club, you actually have a divided deeded interest in real estate. Now there might be a use plan that allows you to use multiple different, residences versus your one fixed one, but you actually own the real estate. You pay real estate taxes. It's monetizable, a lot more monetizable.
So assuming you have a fractional ownership in a property, are you typically in the same residence? I mean, you said you have access to multiple. Do you try to put people in the same residence? They have the same experience, or is it somewhat tough to manage and you kind of get what you get when you show up?
No. So it's very formulaic, right? And so the reason why you have a deeded real estate in a unit, but then you have a use plan. And so what we do with the use plan is everybody gets you get a priority number. And so we'll rank it we'll put a selection criteria together. So, and you just move within that selection. So let's say hypothetically you have 5 weeks, right? Your first week, you might be position 1. Mm-hmm. So you choose first. Your second week, we rotate it. So 6 goes first. Third week, you split it. And then you go back to the top. And what we find is a couple of different things. One, we ask people everybody's number one isn't 1 week. People will say, okay, well, I either want to be out there, for New Year's, I want to be out there for the 4th of July, right, or I want to be there for Memorial Day, or I want to be there for whatever holiday. And so you ask them their choice of what days will work for you. And then because you rotate the priorities, we find that our clubs, we strive to get above 90%. We typically run about 92% success rate for people in selecting their time. So 92% get what they want, but that's because we're giving them flexibility and because we're changing the prioritization. And then what we also have is we have an exchange program called Timbers Reciprocity. And so let's say hypothetically you get a week and it's not something you can use. You can that week actually has currency. So you can go into our exchange program, you can deposit that week. You have up to 2 years to use that credit. We categorize them by, prime, choice, and select. And that way it gives you more flexibility. You can trade back into your club. You can trade to go to Tuscany or Hawaii.
Oh, very cool.
or
That's what we
wherever.
were wondering about earlier today.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So that really helps. That helps not only for the 8%, but we find too, look, we want you to buy real estate because you want to be there, but people like choices and they like options. And what we see, people use that for anniversaries or honeymoons for their kids, or celebration for a birthday milestone, 60 years or 70 years. And that's what we tend to see the exchange happen, is for those big life events.
So we talked a little bit about what Timbers does, but how does a property actually get vetted and become a Timbers property?
It's a process, right? We have quite a few. We get a lot of inquiries. Scott Hall is our senior managing director of business development, and we get a lot of inquiries. So we'll have brokers reach out to us. Hey, I got this property, or I have this hotel that I think can be repositioned. We'll have that. Sometimes we'll have property owners just reach out to us and said, "Hey, I've heard about you guys. I have this property, or I'm acquiring this, and it's a bigger parcel, but I need someone to work on a certain aspect of it." So it's a mix of both. We're actively out there. We typically don't do brokered transactions that frequently. Normally it's off market. That's what we try to do. Frankly, I think it keeps you from just bidding up to a crazy number. Although we have had some bidded processes. But I think the off market really helps you figure out like what is it you need to do. So for instance, Vail was a bankruptcy transaction. We weren't the highest bidder. We were low by $10 million, but we solved the most claimants claims, and we took that property from doing 4.9 million total revenue to we've sold $75 million in real estate. The hotel is doing 24 million bucks a year, and we paid, us and our partners paid 40, I think it was like $44 million for it.
Wow.
So, but a lot of capital had to go into it. So that's like a reposition where we really take a look at it. Hey, the bones are there. It might need to be repositioned. It definitely needs some attention to detail. It was funny. Like some of the folks that had the big $10, $12 million houses, they were looking at buying one of our penthouses. Our penthouses are a 1.6, and I mentioned they sell for around 2.4 million bucks. And I talked to this one guy, and he's just like, "Okay, I got a couple of questions for you." He goes, "The AC breaks, who do I call?" I was like, "Us." He's like, "Okay, the refrigerator breaks, who do I call?" I'm like, "Us." He went through a couple lists. I'm like, "No matter what you're going to ask me, you call us." And he goes, "This is the greatest thing since sliced bread." He goes, "Because I got this big $10 million square foot house, or $10 million house." And he goes, "I get there. I spend the first 2 days figuring out what's not working." He goes, "And then I'm like tied to the house waiting for some repair guy to come out." He goes, "I enjoy it for like 1 day. And then I have to start putting everything up, all the pillows from outside and the whole 9 yards." And he goes, "This is crazy." And he goes, I don't know why I didn't know about this." And so he told friends. And so we literally had, and he actually bought a second interest. So, we have some of those folks that are selling their own beautiful $10 million beachfront home because just at their point in life, they don't want the hassle of having to maintain the whole staff and to having to do it. And here it's just included in your dues, and we just do it for you. Right. And so that's an example of a ground up. We've had some other programmatic things that we've looked at before, like buying some businesses. But it's really those kind of flavors that, some of it could be a marketed deal. It's more than likely word of mouth, or, sometimes it's our financial partners we've worked with in the past. They're like, "Hey, we're acquiring this. We want you to, to work with us on it." But we're very discerning. I mean, we probably look at, 100 deals a year.
Okay.
And 1 or 2 fit the Timbers level. We have, since we moved to Winter Park, we have added a couple of other brands. Soleil Hotels and Resorts is a new brand that it's great to launch a new brand right in the middle of COVID when everything's priced where you won't buy it. But we are looking at the Soleil. That's meant, Timbers is that 0.1 to 0.5 socioeconomic, net worth. Soleil's meant to play more in that 0.5 to 1.5.
Okay.
And 1.5 wealth in the U.S. is still a pretty significant
Right.
wealth. And so I would think Soleil is going to have more of a second home, whereas Timbers really doesn't. And so we did that. And then we also launched Andiamo, which is taking all of our rental product. You know, it used to be at each individual property, and you just get killed on search engine optimization
Right.
and search engine marketing. So what we've done is we pulled that into a brand called Andiamo, which means let's go in Italian. You know, that's the other thing that we did. And really it was moving to Winter Park. I was able to poach the talent from, you know, the market here, and able to launch that.
So just kind of by the numbers, can you describe Timbers Resorts across the different verticals and brands? You know, how many rooms we're talking about, employees, all of that?
We have, you know, 19 locations around the world, and some of those locations might have multiple product at it. And, you know, I would say South Seas obviously is that was a lot of employees are offline. You know, if you add South Seas in, we're probably somewhere around 1,300, 1,400 employees, you know, worldwide. And we have third party providers that do stuff too. I'm not counting that.
Right.
And then, you know, size of company, we're, you know, around $500 million a year, you know, top line revenue. And I don't divulge bottom line, but we do. We're owned by private equity, so they have some pretty healthy return expectations. And you know, we structure ourselves to where each property is a special purpose vehicle. So that doesn't count the properties that the ownership structure in the properties, because all those are with different partners. So I don't cross anything in the company. We have no corporate debt. I don't do any of those things, because it just those things kill development companies.
Yeah. Clearly you got quality control on your end. We see where that comes from. But in the hiring process on the ground level, you know, at all of these resorts, those are people that are clearly very curious and caring, and they're paying attention because, you know, someone's got to orchestrate all those beautiful experiences you just described. And it can't be an accident that many times. That's just part of who they are. And so the hiring process, you're hiring the people that comes natural too.
It is tough, sir.
I was going to piggyback off what you said. And again, we've sat at this table, not this exact one, because as we told you, we moved in recently, but we've sat at this table and we've done hundreds, thousands of financial plans. And I can tell you the one thing that people do not budge on is travel. They will forego getting their dream car. They will forego doing a renovation on their home. They'll forego buying a new home or buying a condo. But it's the travel experiences, and the condo again is part of it. That is part of the travel experience. But what they don't forgo is just time with their family.
Yeah.
And so spending time with the people they care about is paramount to their success when someone officially retires or takes that next step. So I'd have to imagine a lot of what you have from a resident perspective are parents and grandparents who are solely buying it just to spend time with those people they care about.
100%. Like the multi-generational traveler, I'm a believer till the end of time.
Right.
That's the market you want to be in. It was interesting. Some brands have had to shift. You know, Bearish back in the day was dual income, no kids. That was their focus. We don't want kids. Have to deal with kids, have to deal with that stuff. That's not what they wanted. The global financial crisis came along, and you can rationalize with your spouse, significant other, you know, hey, things are tight. You know, I didn't get my bonus. Like, maybe we don't travel. The minute you interject kids into the equation, all bets are off. Right. And we saw that, we frankly were back to kind of pre GFC sales, if you will, by mid 2009. Whereas a lot of other people, it took a while, and it was because we were selling a multi-generational experience. And so if the, you know, kids with the grandkids couldn't afford it, the grandparents stepped in. And look, I'd like to say we've unlocked the code. Our average net worth starts at 18 million and goes up depending upon the property.
Right.
We got some properties where it's, you know, closer to 75 million. So these people have wealth, you know, but what we found is that the multi-generational traveler will not put off vacations, just like you're talking about. I think you're 1,000% dead on. Whereas if you don't have kids, you will. And so we've always been, David Burden was there, and I'm there too. We've always been very intentional about the multi-generational. And I think it creates a sticky experience. And actually now, even with the baby boomers, we're seeing that the kids will buy something because they want the grandparents to come experience stuff with the grandkids. And that's been, really starting to evolve over the past 5 or 6 years. And some locations our owners have been a little younger, uh, which I think is great. And so that's the $26 question, right? Is, when is that wealth transfer going to happen? And it does seem like some of that is starting to happen, and you're starting to get some of the younger generation.
Right.
Back to your question about personnel.
Yeah.
Personnel is the toughest thing. I literally just got off a call with the Mexico City family, and they were like, "Hey, look, we've had a lot of turnover in Vail, and we're worried about maintaining that. It is the biggest challenge, and in these markets, there's no housing. Like, the billionaires are crowding out the millionaires in Aspen, and they just are, and that's happening in Kauai, and it's happening in Vail, and so I do really worry about workforce housing. It's our biggest challenge. And it's also, the biggest irony is, in those markets, while everybody will always talk about workforce housing, no one really wants to do anything about it. That was a part of the reason why we moved from Aspen to here. Is I had people that were making, over 200 grand a year that had to drive, hour and a half each way on a dry day to find housing, and it's just ludicrous. And, when it snows 18 inches of snow, it's not fun. And so, I don't want to name names, but we tried to help via Habitat for Humanity getting some more density on our parcel. And, it was the no brainer to do. It was like, okay, we're going to double this. We're not going to, times 10, we're going to double the amount of density, going from 28 to 56 units, which the site could support it. And we're going to deed restrict it to, firemen and police officers and teachers. And people are like, yeah, no, we don't support that. I'm like, well, then don't talk about affordable housing, because you really don't.
It's the not in my backyard kind of crowd.
It's tough. And look, I worry about it with Florida. I'm on the Florida Council 100, which is 100 business leaders around the state. And we try to help be a conduit from the business community to both the legislature and the governor's office to talk about things that we're concerned about. And affordable housing is one of them. And I applaud Governor DeSantis with Live Local, but people are trying to fight that. Well, everybody wants affordable housing. They just don't want it next to them. And I think it's unfortunate. And I get that people are trying to be the protectors of the community. I get it. But I think particularly in affordable housing, someone's like, guys, let's take a risk on this.
Why can we not agree more when it comes to that? And you have all these unbelievable destinations across the world, and I'm trying to think more about your clientele, like you mentioned, and you're working at such a high level. What does it look like when someone comes to you, wanting to get a property or a fractional, whatever it looks like? What does that process look like? How are you finding your clients? How do you go about that? Or are you kind of turning people away at this point?
The marketing's getting incredibly tough. It's a dynamic, it used to be you dropped an ad in the Wall Street Journal and you get, 400 broker request calls or inquiries, and you call them. But now it's a lot more dynamic, and I'm riding my team on it. It really is the social media, and it's the social media that doesn't have some, wafy model, looking indifferent, standing on a beach. It's not our brand. That might be some other luxury brands, but it's the emotive, like you see this little kid, like we just reopened Scoops and Slices at South Seas, and there's this little kid trying to mow down an ice cream and it's dripping all over his hand. And, it's like, stuff like that, like the Scoops and Slices is back. And like our tire printer, we just dropped an ad today on Facebook that shows like the boats going out with the Folds of Honor flag, and the parachute is coming down, and and more importantly, we had a recipient come talk to us about her dad, who was special forces operator, passed away, and how much the scholarships meant to her. So I think running those types of things, it's really the emotive, but you got to, people are fleeting, they have a short attention span. Right. And so you got to really try to, you're not going to make a sale off of Instagram or one of those, but it plants the seed. And I think that's what we try to do. And then we try to also communicate with our owners. We do query letters, but we don't make it about like, we have unit 6490 available for you. Right. We try to make it about like, hey, this person just got this local award, and, we're so proud of them, and let them talk about it. And it's funny too, because we have our staff write sometimes, and you got to remember, we have like 13 different ethnicities that work for us, because we operate from Italy to, Kauai. And, I love the broken English. I love it because that's authentic. Yep. That's what people want to see. And so we encourage our team to really be authentic. And I think that's important. And we don't want them to be polished, heel clicky. And again, that's some brands. And over in Italy, we actually had, I know this is going to sound, like it doesn't make sense, right. But we actually had an all Italian leadership team, and people are like, well, your property's in Italy. I'm like, but in the hospitality world, you typically would have a GM from the Netherlands, some F&B dude from France, some German in charge of finance and accounting. And then like, it's very stereotypical. But we have an all Italian team, and that's very rare. And like, even when you go to Ferragamo and other places, they all have those folks, because that's kind of the hospitality thinking, right? But we want the authenticity, and we want them to be able to speak in Italian, and it comes in handy. We actually had an owner, he had a heart attack, and he called, we have 4,200 acres. Our homes are 5 kilometers apart, and so we had this guy, and he's like, I don't feel well. And our concierge are like, okay, we're coming to get you. And like, we literally drove to his house. He was insistent he was fine. We are trained on, what to look for. Put him in the car, drove him to Siena, had a massive heart attack in Siena. Wow. Actually had to stay there. He got a heart transplant. And our concierge helped, basically translate for him the entire time, be there. We have a partnership with MedJet Assist. We helped him fly back to the United States via that. We had a bunch of different things, but that's the difference between locals and people that can really get into the community. And the irony is like, he got his bill for his heart transplant, and it was like 12,000 euro. And he was just like, he goes, Greg, this just doesn't seem right. He actually ended up making a huge donation. He found out what it would cost in the US, and then he made a huge donation to the medical center in Siena.
Incredible.
And, like that's the difference of having the right people and the right staff, and being able to make those connections.
So that story actually answered partly what my next question was. And I've seen you use the phrase authentic luxury. And I wanted to understand what that was. And I think what led to that question was, and again, I think it was on a prior podcast, you had talked about how in Hawaii, some of the staff were using sleeves to cover up tattoos. And you all made the decision of, no, that's authentic to that region of the United States. Let's allow them to show those tattoos.
Within reason.
As long as they're respectful and they are relating to that culture. Right. So the authentic luxury experience is very interesting, because you go to, and again, I'm not comparing you all to Marriott or anything, but you go to chain hotels or chain locations, and it is kind of the same globally. Like, there might be a couple of different pictures for that region, but outside of that, there's nothing characteristic of that location. So
100%. Like, look, there's sometimes you want that, if you're traveling in South America, Four Seasons does a great job. Go stay to Four Seasons. You're going to be safe. You're going to get that cushion. But if you are really, wanting to experience Kauai or experience some of these other areas, I would put our brand up against any of those brands, because, we have phenomenal surfers on our team. They will take you out I don't know if you're capable of surfing it, but they'll take you out to the lineup. We got, kids in Vail where, you want to ski with a kid that can, hawk a backflip off a 40-foot cliff. We got them. They work for us, but a lot of times people they want to know that they're with people that do that. They don't necessarily want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that comes out. And it's just our owners, they're just with anything in life, right? Just think of your friends and your affiliations and there's certain things you're like, you go try out and you're like, yeah, I don't know. That's my bag. Like we have owners our owners are ultra high net worth. They're gregarious. They want to interact with each other. That's our vibe. There's other vibes where you go to a place and it's like the masters of the universe. You don't know who has a higher net worth than the other, and they don't really want to talk with each other. They just want to be left alone. That's not our, we're not a good fit for that. So, there's something to be said about knowing where you're fishing. And that's where we try to fish is the people that are, they're happy. They're focused on their family. They want to interact. They don't have to. There's no,
right.
I had a great partner who unfortunately passed away in Mexico City. And he's like, tell me about Hawaii. He goes, I hate the forced aloha. I went there one time and everybody kept saying aloha. And like, they look to you, responds back. And he goes like, after like the fifth aloha, there was no aloha, and I get it. Right. So we try to make sure, again, we're not forcing you to do anything. We're just setting the condition that if you want to do it, you get to experience it. And I think that's what you do. And look, you have to constantly evolve. It's my partner before I was talking here was like, remember we used to do Sparkle and Pop, and it was like the craziest thing. It was like all these different, popcorns, all these different flavors with like really expensive champagne. We used to do that in Vail and it was a hit. And he's just like, remember that? I'm like, I do remember that. He goes, why did we stop doing it? I'm like, I don't know, but like, we're going to start doing it again. And and it was nothing more than it just created energy.
I do want to talk a little bit about the move from Aspen to Winter Park. And specifically, you had mentioned that Winter Park had some characteristics of areas of Aspen. That was somewhat the reason why you made the move here. So talk a little bit about what Winter Park is to you and what made it such an attractive location for the Timbers headquarters.
Sure. Luckily growing up in Florida, I was very familiar with Winter Park and the area and just more of the Central Florida area. Having been born here, my grandparents lived in the market. My aunt was an original cast member at Magic Kingdom.
Really awesome.
She was a high schooler and played Cinderella.
Amazing.
So I was very familiar with the area. I think I mentioned that housing, where we try to adjust affordable housing. That was really a straw broke a camel's back, and I'm like, look, I can't hire people in the Aspen area. Aspen is stunning. It's beautiful. It's not reality. It's just not reality. My daughter's best friend lived in a $40 million house. That's not reality. Right. And there's not one $40 million house. There's a lot of them. And so, it was really that tension where I couldn't get good talent. I couldn't get labor. So, my partners at my board and I talked about it and they're like, we want you to look at, Dallas, Denver, Atlanta. And, they said Miami. I was like, yeah, look, I have good friends in Miami. I don't want to live in Miami.
Yeah, good choice.
But I had a different reason for not wanting to be in Miami. So, I ran a process because, private equity, you got to run a private process, but I knew where I wanted to be. And I mentioned the 118 million visitors a year to Florida was a big drive. The community was great. I actually worked with the Orlando Economic Partnership, which I'm on the board of as well. And they did a very thoughtful, they asked me, where else are you looking? And I told them, and they gave me this detailed report of a whole bunch of different metrics: airlift, average home price, average income, education scores. Just a really comprehensive analysis. They did a phenomenal job on it, and it already confirmed what I knew. And so when I started looking at the process, I told uh, the former global head of real estate for Oaktree, I was like, I don't want to be in Miami because then I'm a Miami developer trying to develop in Naples, and I don't want to be a Naples guy trying to develop in Miami, and I don't want to be a Tampa guy trying to develop in either one of those. And the one area of the state that I think people just kind of is like, oh yeah, it's it's different
Mhm.
is really Winter Park, right? And so uh, that was a little bit of the method to the madness, is being in a non-threatening market to
Mm.
do, if the stated goal is to move to Florida and do development all over Florida, uh, and I didn't live in Orlando, not taking anything away from Orlando, but Winter Park and Orlando, they just have different characteristics.
Right.
So, being a Winter Park, a base company, we kind of are like, you're kind of patted on the head. Oh, it's the little Winter Park guys,
Mhm.
which is perfectly fine
Exactly.
with me because
I don't know better.
I experienced it being the Aspen, like, well, I don't need an Aspen guy in Steamboat trying to tell us how to develop
Mm.
stuff, or, in Vail. And so it's a real deal. And it's real when you're working with planning commissions, or when you're working with, city or county commissions. It really is real. So that was a little bit of the calculus. So, I actually had a meeting with my board, and I showed them this presentation and why I wanted to do Winter Park. And, the head of real estate actually calls up this guy. He calls up the guy that has Florida. He goes, man, I'm sitting here with Spencer, and like, it's amazing what's going on in Central Florida. Like, we need more, assets there. And the guy goes, what are you talking about? We got like several million square feet in that market. He goes, we do? He goes, well, let's buy more, but so the OEP did a great job of,
I was going to say, with
laying that out.
helping you actually just put the numbers to it to make your
They
case.
did.
That's great.
And then, I got to give a shout out to Bill Diamond,
Oh yeah.
and Tom Sidema, and they're great friends. Bill was a managing partner at Lowndes,
Mhm.
and previously. And so basically Bill was part of the group that helped recruit us here. And it just was a very welcoming. It wasn't a like, oh, I don't know if this guy's worthy, or I don't know if we want it. It was just an extremely welcoming process. Mayor Demings was welcoming. I did meet with the city council for Winter Park. They were very welcoming. And it just was a really great experience. Mayor Dyer. And so, that was a really easy thing. And so, I went through Enterprise Florida. I got some, like, oh, you got $750,000 in taxes. I think we got like the benefit of like 100,000 of it, because we're not taxed, right?
Right.
Being private equity owned.
Right.
And I can tell our jobs, though, we brought jobs that were like 220% of the average, because they were all headquarter jobs.
Yeah.
So I think it was a win-win for the community. What does Winter Park mean to me? I think Winter Park's a phenomenal community. It really is. And, it really is a sense of community. And, I did have something to say about where our office was going to be located. And, so it's kind of, I live in Windsong, and I was like, I want to live here. I want the office there off of Morse, and my kids are going to go to school here, Lake Island.
Mhm.
So, it works out, right? I'm 10 minutes away. And, even in Aspen, if something wasn't that far away, it's the mountains. Like, there's no, like, as the bird flies route to get there, And
Right.
so, something that was 5, 7, 8 miles away could take you 45 minutes if it's
Right.
dumping snow. So the convenience is really a factor, but I really like the sense of community. And, really Park Ave, it was to me is very similar to what you would see in, Vail and Aspen and, uh, Carbondale and Basalt, all those areas, all those little mountain towns, the scale's right. And, just the fact that you have shops and businesses there. And it is a big draw. And even our office, we're in, 1031 Morse, the Seacoast building. Mr. Barnes is a great landlord, but like, we can cut right across to Winter Park Village, and my team loves it. They can go to Winter
Mhm.
Park Village. They can go to Hillstone. They can go to,
Exactly.
to 60 Vines.
They come to our new
you know.
office down the block
They
right
can.
here.
They go to Trader Joe's, and it just like, I wanted easy for our team because again, I was moving from a place that was incredibly uneasy. So I really wanted easy for our team. And so it's been great. And look, it's tough to maintain the balance in the community. And I understand the challenge that city councils and everybody has, but I think they've done a great job here. I just think affordable housing is something that is everybody's problem, even if you don't think it's your problem. So, yeah, it's been very welcoming, and I've made some great friends. I'm on a little breakfast council that Tom Sidema sets up, and it's it's a great group of just camaraderie and
I'm sure.
and just very Christian based folks. Mike Welker with ANCO, Alex Mearns with Orlando Magic, Tony Massey, Joe Nunziata with FBC Mortgage, John Rivers, there's just a big, I know I'm leaving other people out, but there's just a great group of Ken Robinson with Dr. Phillips Charities. And really, I didn't know any of those guys. And it was really Bill and Tom that, introduced me to them. And it was really cool because like, you didn't get that out in Aspen. It was kind of a little bit of a every man for themselves type of mentality.
Right.
And I think that is what makes Winter Park special. And I think that's why Winter Park's kind of a hidden jewel, people don't realize the wealth here. Everybody goes, oh, Miami and Naples. And, I'm like, well, there's a couple shackles rolling around Winter Park.
Just a little more subtle and more family and community oriented. And so
I
think it draws those kind of people. If that's not you and you want to be more arm distance, master the universe, like you were saying earlier, then that's great, but that's not here.
It really isn't. And it's deceptive. Like we're, a tiny little company, right? But I'm owned by a $185 billion private equity fund that's owned by an $800 billion private equity fund. And, that's close to $1 trillion AUM, and these, and, I communicate up. They see what's happening in communities and markets. And I think that's the thing that Florida needs to continue to maintain is, these guys hear challenges for zoning. They hear challenges for workforce housing. They hear that stuff. And, you guys fish in that world, they make a lot of investment decisions. And so I think we always want to be business friendly. That doesn't mean business taking advantage. That means business friendly, right? And look, yes, I got a tax advantage to move here, but I did my part. I brought jobs that were significantly over the average. And, and I think when you have situations like that and it's a win-win for everybody, I think that's where you have a really vibrant community. And I think Winter Park has managed to pull that off. I think Central Florida has managed to pull that off.
Yeah.
And I think frankly, the state of Florida has managed to pull that off, and it's a very attractive place, and it's because of business. And it'll be interesting to see what shakes down over the next 5 years. Like LA, I had several folks that I know that lost their homes, right? That are board members or advisors of our company. And, they were talking to me and they know how long it's going to take to get South Seas back. And they're like, what are we looking at with Pacific Palisades? I'm like, guys, it's 15 to 20 years. Like, I mean, I'm in a red state, pro growth, pro development, pro recover after a hurricane. And it's going to take me forever because of all the, litigation, et cetera. Can you imagine out in California? I mean, it's just, and it's not like, I got a little, 300 acre resort, there's 10,000 homes. And so I think it's going to substantially change the fabric of Pacific Palisades, which is a shame. But I also think this could be a tipping point where people are like, okay, guys, no more, right? You got to get your act together, right? You can't just oppose everything for the sake of opposing it. You got to, like, what's the solution? It's just like, when, everybody's had your young child where they just, when they get stuck on no, like, I want you to do this. No, I want you to do that. No.
Mine's there right now. Yeah.
Then you know what you do?
2 years old right there.
You just walk in the other room. Right.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen. People are going to be like, okay, Pacific Palisades, no, I'm just going to move to Florida or Texas or, one of these other states where people, even if it's like a no, but you can do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Right.
But when you just are the voice of no, people are going to vote with their feet.
Right.
Just
keeps accelerating. I mean, you saw it during COVID some, and
Yeah.
it continues to your point.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So, and I think to this point about your relocation too, I think I read, which excited me because it's kind of how I think about it too, is, I was thinking several years back about, do I want to move somewhere else? This is where I'm from. I love it here. We all love it here, but it's such a good home base for people that do like to travel.
Yeah.
And you can get, instead of going to Aspen to Europe, sounds like a nightmare. Going from here to Europe is much more convenient, both sides of the Florida coast or back out west in the United States. I mean, it's pretty great. And with the airport we have, and now the Bright Line even getting down one side of the coast.
I can get from Orlando to Kauai faster off season than I can from Aspen.
Really?
Which is just amazing, right? Because some of it's air service. So you have to drive to Denver and then connect to LA, and it just
interesting.
It really, we have a phenomenal asset in our airport. Need a few more parking spots, but we have a phenomenal asset, and just the airlift to Europe it's super easy. And I think we have like the 4th most direct flights in the country, which was, or at least we did at the time. And that was a great selling point because look, it is productivity when people are just tied up and traveling. And look, I wish there was a faster way to get to Captiva other than a 4.5 hour drive that I leave at 4 a.m. to get down to. But, you can drive, and like, there's days I'll drive down to Captiva, do what I have to do and drive back that day. And, I'd rather do that than, burn. Yeah. I don't see my family that night, but I see them next morning.
Right.
And, that's a cool trait. And I do think that's a little, unknown quality of Florida, particularly Central Florida, is that you can jump to either coast and generally, I can go to Tallahassee and have a meeting with the governor or with whomever and get back in, that day.
Or watch the Knowles go play.
So watch the Knowles, suffer. Hopefully not this year.
Yeah, there you
knock
go.
on wood. But that's a really cool benefit of our state, is that it is traversable, right? And you can, if you have businesses focused here, it's easy to do. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Winter Park, and frankly, OEP's asking me to help recruit other people, other companies, not just to Winter Park, but even to Orlando. And I always jump at the offer because, again, I remember Bill was gracious enough to spend time with me, and I feel like it's, I gotta pay it back to the entire Central Florida community for welcoming us and really, giving us an opportunity to be successful here.
Well, we appreciate your thoughts on the community, and obviously appreciate your time today and for bringing such a awesome company to Central Florida. And it was great getting to know you and learn more about timbers. Well,
thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity. And look, if there's any folks listening to your podcast, we're right off of Morse, and I'm always happy to meet new people, and I might try to sell you some real estate, but look, it's always great to meet people in the community, and we really push our team to be part of the community. So I think this is great that you do this, and you're more motivated than I am. So I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.